regular meeting of the Ojai City Council for May 14, 2013 to order. Just apologize for the late start. For those of you that weren't here earlier, we had a workshop with the Planning Commission. It lasted a little bit longer than it was supposed to, and then we had to get the room set up for our meeting. So welcome. Thank you again for being here. Could we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Lara?
Here.
Councilmember Clapp?
Here.
Councilmember Smith?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Strobel is absent. Mayor Blatz?
Here. And Councilwoman Smith, if you could lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Stand up, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have a presentation this evening. Once a year, we have a presentation to a youth in our community for Mayor of the Day. And I understand that Maggie Seminaro, is that it? Seminaro is here. Welcome. Good. All right. From the Rotary Club of Ojai.
Yes, this is
Welcome.
Thank you.
And do you have something that you'd like to say before we do the presentation?
Well, yeah, I would just like to say that, yeah, this is the second year that we've had our youth mayor of the day. And Kevin Griffey was presented to his constituency at Youth Fest last month by Councilman Lara. And he is out of retirement tonight. He was brought here by limo. John Gordon of Ojai Limos, so he traveled, the right way, and I really wanted to ask Severo to introduce him like he did at Youth Fest. I thought it was really fitting to have two such young leaders together. Not that we're old, but you know what I mean. But anyway, Severo.
With further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce Kevin Griffey. The short time we met and talked, I really sensed a connection right away because not only were we love the same things, cross country, soccer. He's really involved with his community. He's a sophomore at Thatcher. I wasn't a Thatcher student, but went to Nardolph. But we had a lot in common. The only thing that I have to say about Kevin that impressed me is not only his accolades, but really his character. His poise, his charisma, his integrity. He really has made his parents proud, and I cannot say how much that means to me and everybody. So with further ado, Kevin, could you come up? And Mayor Blatz is going to read your proclamation. And I know that you're going to read your essay too, and so that everybody could hear what he would do if he was a mayor. So.
Welcome, Kevin.
Thank you so much.
It's really nice to have you here. I'm going to sit when I read this only because when I stand up, it doesn't pick it up from the microphone.
Oh, yes.
So we have a proclamation for you that I'm going to be giving to you tonight. I'm going to read it as it's intended to be. However, at the very bottom where I would like to have your name inserted, it's not on here, so we're going to have it redone. So I'll give you this tonight, and then you're going to get another one with your name in the right place.
Thank you.
So this is a proclamation whereas the City of Ojai, Ojai Youth Connect, and Rotary Club of Ojai sponsored a Mayor for the Day essay contest. And whereas youth under the age of 18 attending school in the Ojai Valley were encouraged to submit an essay of 300 words or less describing what they would do as mayor of the City of Ojai to support the youth in the Ojai Valley. And whereas members of the Ojai Youth Connect and the Rotary Club of Ojai reviewed and judged numerous essay submissions and selected the winner for the Mayor for the Day contest. And whereas the chosen youth mayor is a fine, upstanding youth who eloquently expressed wishes for our city. And whereas youth represent our most important resource, as they are the future decision makers and citizens of our community, and where it is important to acknowledge the efforts of many young people who have put forth the strengths of our community, and whereas youth should be viewed not as only hope for the future, but as the leaders and problem solvers for today, and should be valued for their unique idealism, energy, creativity, and the commitment to bring and address the challenges in their community. Now, therefore, I, Paul Blatz, the mayor of the city of Ojai, and on behalf of the city council, do hereby commend Kevin Griffith, the youth mayor for the day, and it's dated May 14, 2013, and I have signed it. If you could come forward, please, I'd like to give this to you. I also have a pin. This is the city of Ojai pin. And again, we'll give this to you, and we'll have your name inserted there.
Great,
Thank you very much. We're very proud, Kevin, to have you, and if there's anything you'd like to say, we're more than welcome. Do you have your essay with you?
Oh, yes.
Okay, well, we'd like to hear it.
Yeah. So
We would like to hear it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Blatz. Thank you, Councilman Lara, and thank you, Maggie. And thank you all for inviting me here today. So I feel very honored to be selected as mayor for the day. And part of that privilege is to write this essay, which I'm going to share with you all today, which the prompt was, what would you do if you were mayor for the day? So what would I do if I were mayor for the day? Well, Ojai, California is a small town I call home. Similar to my own home, I possess immense pride in this beautiful valley. I continually try my best to preserve Ojai and its many wonders, just as I work to clean and repair my own home. In addition, similar to helping my own family, my goal is to serve Ojai's community in any way I can, and lend a hand in protecting its residents. If I were mayor, my main objectives would be to continue to treat our wonderful town as I would my own home, and encourage Ojai residents to have pride in our town that is worth preserving and protecting. Have you ever realized just how lucky we are to live in this amazing place? If I were mayor, I would eliminate the thumbs down section in the newspaper, but instead dedicate an entire page to thumbs up with personal reflections about how fortunate we actually are to live in this special town. In order to encourage more youth participation, there could also be a school-wide competition in which students could submit essays, poems, or artwork expressing why they feel proud to be an Ojai resident. The participants' entries could be displayed in Libby Park so as to spread a feeling of pride in this truly one-of-a-kind place we call home. The city of Ojai is a treasure, and we should all help to keep it this way so that future generations are able to experience the same wonders we experience every day. If I were mayor, I would begin an Ojai Community Service Day, in which Ojai residents are encouraged to assemble into groups to perform various community services such as picking up trash, planting plants and trees, or working on the local hiking trails to make them more user-friendly, etc. If we all pitch in, we could accomplish so much and have a great deal of fun as well while working with others in the community. Afterwards, in order to celebrate the hard work of the day, there could also be a free concert or family movie night at Libby Bowl for all who contributed. I say this because I feel Libby Bowl is a little underused. In other communities that I have lived, there have been concerts in the park every Friday. Ojai could start something like this. We have so many talented musicians in Ojai that would be willing to showcase their talents for little or no charge. It could be a way for the community to come together and further utilize this beautiful Libby Bowl that we are fortunate to have here in Ojai. We also need to maintain Ojai's reputation as a very safe city and look out for one another in the community. For instance, in the past, there was an OK community disaster drill in which residents displayed an OK sign to signal that they were safe. We should continue to practice drills such as this one and plan for more potential dangers that could arise from wildfires, earthquakes, or other threats. As mayor, I would encourage the youth to get involved in assembling home disaster boxes at school to bring home to their families. In addition, more could be done in our schools and local community to support the homeless and those that are less fortunate. As mayor, I would make a point to send out to the community the names of those families and individuals that are in need of help, so that Ojai residents have the opportunity to help others in our valley. As mayor, I would simply implement these ideas along with many more to remind our residents that Ojai is a special place that we should be proud of and that deserves to be preserved and protected. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. That was wonderful, and believe me, it gives me pause to think of all the things that myself and my fellow councilmen have been when they've been mayor, all the things that we could be doing. So thank you very much. That was wonderful. And thank you to the Rotary Club of Ojai for sponsoring that. That's a wonderful program. All right, we're going to move on to commission reports. I see the chair of our Park and Recreations Commission here, Chair Haney. Good evening.
Good evening. It's a tough one to follow.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for that honor.
Hey, and you're not the mayor.
But if I was mayor, I just came by, wanted to say hi and just let you know that we're looking forward to the budget meetings that are coming forward. And we're seeing good things right now in the Recreation and Parks Department. Excellent things. And a lot of good things. We see a lot of, looks like monies that are going to be spent improving the facilities and in and around the town. So we're extremely happy about that.
Good. Any questions of Chair Haney?
Yes, where can people pick up the summer schedule of classes and stuff?
They should be available at the at Sarasota Park.
And they're out here in our counter. Are there any other places that are available?
Not off the top of my head, but I'm sure that they were. No, I couldn't.
Okay.
I couldn't
I'm just
respond to that.
encouraging the public, pick up the brochure. It's besides full of activities and beautifully done. And if your kids say they have nothing to do in Ojai, I suggest you hand it to this.
I also
Mayor
just
Black.
wanted to touch on one thing about that, the open space vote that we took. I just wanted to the commission wanted to be clear that you understood us, that we were all for it. We just didn't know how to budget for it. So that was our concern. It wasn't any, it voted 3-2 or something like that, but we all wanted it. We just didn't quite understand how to fund it. And I think that was our biggest issue going into that. We didn't even know how to figure out, we couldn't even figure out how to partially fund it because we weren't sure about that. So with Rob's guidance, I'm sure that they've figured it out, and we think that's all behind us. So I just wanted to talk to that if anyone wanted to.
Any questions on that?
Regarding that?
No.
And also, I think it was important that Savarlo, Councilman Lara, did allow us to debate it at the commission. It was good, and it was a good place to probably start prior than coming back to it. But it would have been, again, it was a good opportunity just to talk about it. And it was a good thing to find out that we had a fund that we never knew about. So, and again, there's no blame on that. It's just, it's just, what it did is it made us more aware, and also, we put together a budget committee so that we're not gonna sit around and wait till we come into this time of year each year, that we can start, getting a better understanding of how the budget process works and have more insight from our fellow commissioners in doing that. So, thank you.
Thank you, Randy.
Mayor Blatz, I
Yes.
just wanted to add, you could go to Facebook if you haven't, go into the Parks and Recreation Department. You could also go online. But it is important for everybody if they're looking for things to do in the summer. There's plenty. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
I just, I keep forgetting to do this. Steve McCleary is just an incredible asset. And he has stepped up. He's just doing an incredible job. Sophocles is doing an incredible job. But I believe that Steve is really leading this, the department and taking it to another level. So good job with that,
All right.
the way that's come together.
Thank you. Those comments are really important, Randy. Thank you. The chair of our planning commission, Chair Necklin's here.
Thank you. Good evening again.
Hi.
Yeah, this evening I think we had a great meeting together, and I think that we should do it more often. definitely. I think it's very good with the communication between the Commission and City Council. Coming up on our agenda this year, well, there's the housing element and the codes we're going to be looking at again, and also the landscape ordinance. I think it's been a very interesting one that we're going to deal with. I just want to say that young man that was here this evening, he kind of echoed a lot of the things that the Planning Commission's about too, besides City Council, and it was great to hear that coming from someone so young. And that's really what I all have to say.
All right, thank you. Any questions or comments for Chair Necklin? No?
I have a question.
Oh.
You say you'd like to meet more often?
Well, 3 or 4 times a year, I think it'd be nice if we just, if things came up and just having it'd be nice to. I just think a lot of good things came out this evening.
I think so too.
And cleared up.
Yeah.
And meeting with the Planning Commission particularly, Mr. Clark, I think 3 or 4 times a year for an hour before our meeting, we can all get here at 6 instead of 7. I think it's really important.
Yeah, I do too. Right now, it's kind of scheduled once a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we should, let's do it every quarter.
I think also, it clears up certain questions and things,
Yeah.
commissioners don't come to all the meetings and.
It's really the only opportunity that we have where we can talk, because we have to do it in an open
Brown out.
forum, and to air things and have the public be able to communicate with us at the same time, I think is really important.
Yeah, let's
So,
do that.
I'd like to see it happen more often,
Yeah.
too. Thank you.
I do too. Every quarter might be a bit ambitious.
maybe-
Perhaps 3 times a year
Every 4
is
months?
more doable, yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. I don't see any of our other commission chairs out there. Is there anyone that I'm missing? No? All right, we'll move on to public communication. Public communication is a time set aside during our meeting for members of the public to address the council or the successor agency on items of city business that are not scheduled agenda items. Matters raised at this time may be briefly discussed by the council and will generally be referred to staff and/or placed on a subsequent agenda. Under state law, other than for emergency items, no action can be taken tonight on any of the issues that are raised. Persons wishing to address the council are requested to fill out a speaker's card prior to us reaching this point in the agenda, and comments should be limited to 3 minutes or less. I have one speaker's card here, but it's not for public communication. Is there anyone wishing to address us? Yes, come forward.
Jeff Wells, Ojai. I really, I sat through the joint meeting, and I really wish there could have been more participation. I was here for the one section, I think it was section 2, with regards to the right-of-way. As I think all of you are well aware, I was trying to put up a wall in front of Casa Ojai, and I was met with, great, it was almost a deterrent with the planning department, and looking at how the whole process went over. I really think I think the city really needs to look at that department hard. I was given reasons that really aren't supportive through the ordinances, and I was, especially with regards to the right-of-way survey, I was told, that I should go out and get a survey, or not that I should, that I must go out and get a survey. It's, at first it was, point to point in the front, and then by the time, things started to evolve in that process, it was basically a full-on survey identifying curbs, sidewalks, buildings, pools, pool houses, planter areas, everything. That's about a $5,000 survey before I even, start to dig, in the ground. I'd already spent about $1,200 basically preparing for this, and although I'm putting up an aesthetic, wall, of course I didn't have it, that professional. I had a draftsman, I didn't have a landscape architect. I basically came to the city, wanted to basically put on this, beautify the front of the property, what I considered, to be a beautiful project. And basically I was met with, obstacles, hurdles. This wasn't a positive experience, and I've experienced other, situations or other times when I've gone to the planning department, to basically pull a permit, and basically it was kind of like almost a fight. And it shouldn't be that way. It's a negative process. I'm here to speak out. There's so many more people that, who are afraid to come here, afraid with regards to backlash and other types of, negativity. I just can't, I figure I got to come up and talk because I have to go through this process. I got several properties in town. I want to basically improve them. I plan to be in Ojai for a long time. It is a great place to live. But I can't be met with these obstacles when I'm trying to basically pull really simple permits, building a wall. And I know that Rob has said, there's certain areas with regards to uncertainties with an easement and this, that, and the other. Look, I met with Caltrans. I met with the county surveyors department. They all looked at me as if I was stupid, because it was basically in black and white with regards to the legal description. Unfortunately, there are some obstacles and hurdles, but they don't have to be met with such negativity, with such difficulty with regards to getting something through as easy as a wall. And with regards to the joint planning meeting that you had, you actually brought up a good point. This is a civil matter. So if I'm building in a street, or if I'm building in a public right-of-way, or if I'm building on somebody's property, it becomes a civil matter. And I don't really understand how the city becomes, gets involved to a certain extent, especially when I'm building so far out of the right-of-way. I provided a survey of the property next door that basically identified the property corner and 20 feet in to my property, and that still wasn't good enough. I just heard from you guys in this joint commission or meeting that it was good enough. So I'm really getting a really frustrated, sort of feeling with regards to, how this whole process, comes down. And again, I just want to fix up my properties. And so when I try to do it right, I'm basically met with all of these obstacles, all of this negativity. And then you guys, and I know Carol Smith was like saying, why don't people get, licensed contractors? Why don't people get permits? Why don't they? They don't do it, and they ask for forgiveness later because they don't want to get basically intimidated or have this negative feedback that they get when they go into the planning commission. And that's all I need to say. Hopefully, you guys, I know I've spoken to some of you, individually, but you have to hear it publicly, and it has to. Hopefully, that department, can be met, or hopefully there can be something that works out. So it's more of a positive process. The last positive experience I had with the planning department is when you guys had Robert Casillas. Do you guys remember Robert Casillas? Great guy. He helped me with Sunito. Basically, did a great job. And I can go and I can give you great examples. I have too many examples, negative examples, and I shouldn't have to have that unless there's really good reason. Trust me, the type of projects that I would bring that I don't think would fly, I don't bring them. I'm not going to build something that's really not going to fly. Yeah. And that's why when I wanted to remove rock walls off an apartment building. And I basically was told that, okay, well, that's going to have to go to planning commission. You're going to have to pay $1,300 or whatever you're going to have to pay. I just turned around and said, forget it. I'm not going to do that. Yeah. And then that hurts the city. So people like myself who want to improve our property, we don't get the opportunity because we're basically blocked and we're basically put down. We're, met with that, with that wall at right over there in that office over at the planning department.
All right. Jeff, thank you. We get the picture.
Thanks.
And you should be aware that there are some things that we're looking at in terms of streamlining some processes through the planning department. So we're working on it.
But you know what? Another question with regards to there was the report in the newspaper how there's going to be a new type of process with regards to if it gets denied at the planning commission and then at the city manager level, then it was going to be reviewed by the 2 city council members. I would hope that my project of my aesthetic wall that I want to build at Casa Ojai, I would like to not demand but ask that be basically placed in front of this 2-member process for the first, for an experiment.
We're still working on the details of that, but as soon as we have it ready, Any projects that are
I'm
there?
ready.
Okay.
So
Again,
I
we've got
wait with
we've
great
got a
anticipation.
few hurdles to jump through before we can get it to the point where we can actually put it into process, but we're working on it.
All right.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the public wishing to address the, yes, come forward. Randy?
Again, thank you for allowing me to speak. I constantly hear the negative about this planning department, and I'd like to just say a couple good things about it. I'm a contractor, and I come to this planning department all the time, and I come in asking questions. I come in not as a know-it-all, but as someone that needs advice. And I get nothing but great advice. I get nothing but excellent communication from anyone and everyone I've ever dealt with in that department for 20 years. So if there's some stuff going on, I think it can be resolved. But more importantly, I just want to say this planning division and this planning department is not the worst thing in the world. I can talk about Oxnard. I can talk about Thousand Oaks. I can talk about a lot of communities where you jump through more hoops than Carter's got pills. And we don't have that process here. Do we have some things that we need to deal with? Yes. But other than that, we've got a great division, we've got a great department, and we've got a great leader running it. So thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Anyone else wishing to address the council tonight? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the consent calendar. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Roll call, please.
Laura,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Clap,
Yes.
Blatz.
Yes. We don't have any public hearings this evening, so we'll move on to discussion items. That's number 2 on our agenda, is a review of staff level determinations. Mr. Clark?
Imagine that after all that discussion. Thank you, Mayor and members of the City Council. The City of Ojai receives a large number of applications for planning approvals and building approvals, about 600 per year. And in receiving those applications, we have to make administrative level determinations. And many of them are pretty straightforward and non-controversial, but they're things like what needs to be submitted to be a complete application? Do you need a survey? Do you need some evidence of what your property line is? What type of permit is required for this particular project? Is it an administrative permit? Is it a permit that needs to go to the Planning Commission or whatever? And out of 600 applications, we maybe get a dozen, but probably less than a dozen per year, where there's a disagreement, where the applicant feels that administratively we have been too black and white or too legalistic, or however you might want to frame it. And I think that we would admit that in some cases we have been. And in recent weeks, in the last month and a half or so, we've really made a concerted effort to not only take into consideration the letter of the law, but also the spirit of the law. And as you know, we have many, many rules on the books, and they were all designed to make Ojai a better place for the benefit of the whole community. But sometimes, when you really look at the letter of the law, it doesn't capture what was intended. And so we certainly are trying to do better administratively in terms of making those kinds of decisions. However, this particular item has to do with if we can't resolve something at an administrative level, what options does the applicant have to have the administrative decision reviewed? And right now, the basic option is to appeal the decision to the Planning Commission. And as we note in the staff report, that's a fairly expensive item, and it's also a time-consuming and a risky item. So there have been some suggestions made as to how we might have a more user-friendly way of reviewing those administrative decisions. One option was to institute an informal, no-cost appeal process. And initially, we talked about the first level being to the city manager and the second level being to the mayor and the mayor pro tem. What we found is that if the council were to designate the mayor and mayor pro tem to do that job, they would be creating what's called a standing committee under the Brown Act, which would incredibly complicate this. You would then be having a public review, you would be having notice public hearings, you'd be providing notice to the adjoining properties and so forth for a standing committee. So we are recommending that there be a no-cost informal appeal process to the city manager. If that process doesn't work, or if the applicant chooses not to follow that process, the second thing that we're looking at as an alternative is a lower-cost planning commission appeal. And right now it's over $1,000, and we think that's probably twice as much as it should be. And during our fee review, we'll actually ask you to set what you think is an appropriate fee for that. But the idea here is twofold. One is that you can go to the Planning Commission with a smaller outlay of cash. And secondly, we're recommending that if the applicant prevails and the Planning Commission overturns staff, that we would consider that a refundable fee. So if we have overstepped our bounds and been too rigid, and the Planning Commission reviews it and determines that it should have been granted, then we would propose that the fee be refunded. The third item is an item that came up during our discussion of the building code update. Within the building code update, there's a Board of Building Appeals, and the Board of Building Appeals' responsibility is to interpret the building code. So this doesn't apply to planning decisions or zoning decisions, such as an application to build a wall. But if we say a building permit is required to build a wall and you challenge that, this would apply. Or if you want to use different materials than those which are permitted in the building code, this would apply. And the idea was to create this board and make it a broad community-based board, because there was a lot of concern about what might be contained in the building code update, and we wanted to give people confidence that it would be the interested parties, such as the real estate community, a community business member, a licensed contractor, a licensed architect who's looking at this interpretation and making a decision. So these are three ideas that we've put forward. I'm sure that other people have other ideas, but we wanted to take a step in the direction of alleviating this problem.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Any comments by the council?
Yes.
Councilwoman Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just concerned, and the makeup of the board at the end of page 2-2, where it says community business member and community member at large, because the board has to make decisions on matters pertaining to construction codes. I assume that the community business member we may want to pull them from a hardware store, somebody who has some idea about codes and construction costs, rather than just, in other words, we could maybe put a parenthesis on that, who has some business or some entity that gives him some qualifications in that area, and also for the member at large too. Yeah. So that's my only suggestion. I think it's a great idea, but I think we should look for people who have some forehand knowledge of that area.
Thank you. Any other comments? I just have one. I was the one that came up with the idea of it coming informally before the mayor and the mayor pro tem, but I can understand now. The difficulty we have is it being a standing committee as defined under the Brown Act. So I'm comfortable with all three of these procedures to be implemented. I can see where, well, the no-cost informal review by the city manager, that I completely agree with as a first step. Then I would presume that depending on what it was, would it go in either of one of two directions, one to the Planning Commission or the other to this standing committee, building board, or whatever?
Right, yeah, if it's a building code issue, it would go to the building board,
Okay.
and if it's a zoning issue, it would go to the Planning
Okay.
Commission.
So I would be all in favor of implementing it as soon as we possibly could. I do have one card. Mr. Quigg?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This the review of staff level determinations, I believe, is the subject we're on. I was caught in a complete quagmire of interpretation of Planning Commission had made determinations that the staff decided that the Planning Commission had made a mistake and that they were going to correct the Planning Commission. If you concur with that, I would be surprised. When I gave that same presentation to the city manager, he concurred with staff. He felt that staff was doing their job. What you suggested that there was perhaps an opportunity to have the mayor and Mayor Pro Tem involved in the review. I read more detailed review of staff level determination that's in your packet, and it starts talking about a review, and then all of a sudden, as it passes into the text of it, review becomes the appeal process. When did the review process become an appeal process? Somewhere it was like bait and switch sort of thing, as far as I'm concerned, or at least the way it appears. It mentions in the report that there are, on simple occasions, of a dozen or so. I'd like to know how many of those dozen or so determinations by staff have been reversed by the Planning Commission. What's the list sound like or look like? This thing that I printed up, I tried to hand it out to everybody so they have an idea of what I was talking, what this thing's about. What ends up happening is there's unjustifiable, onerous appeal process where a fee schedule is applied to really small ticket items. You get a $600, $700, $800, $1,200 sign, and the fee is $1,500 to have it appealed. And then on top of that, the thing that I alluded to that Councilmember Smith said, well, if there's a problem, they should fix that. It was an 8.5 by 11 document that we were making all of our decisions off of, and it was handed to us by staff. Fact of the matter was, the document was supposed to be 8.5 by 14. All of the part that gave me all of the entitlement to have put that tile and that color on those things had been removed by staff. When I finally got the packet or the file opened up and I took a look at it, I said, bingo, here's the problem. It was resolved, and the permit was immediately the next day they gave it to him. The fee is more than the entire project cost for sales, concept design, materials, fabrication, hardware, installation. The director says if the entire deposit is not required, this is for a permit or a variance, I think, or an appeal, a partial refund is provided to the appellant. The city manager just said, the city may say if the appeal is successful, the fee's returned. Those are similar statements, but not the same.
Right. I'm going to have you wrap up because you have had your 3 minutes. What we're talking about, Mr. Quigg, is putting into process some new procedures.
Very
what
well.
Mr. Clark was referring to, like right now, we don't have an informal appeal or an informal review by the city manager. We want to do that.
Very
What
well.
he's talking about is perhaps if it goes to a low-cost appeal to the Planning Commission and the Planning Commission finds in favor of the applicant to be able to refund that fee. These are things that we're talking about and things we want to implement, not things that are in place right now. So it's really important that we get input from you and other people, because I think that some of the things we're trying to do, we're on the same page as you,
I believe so.
so thank you.
the thing that in your packet you have on page 2-1, it talks about the procedural process, standard review, operational staff requirements, day-to-day procedures. Call it whatever, but make it work. Somewhere along in this review process, excuse me for being, I just had these puppies printed up and can't get them apart now. Apparently, there's a problem with the Brown Act. The Brown Act exempt is the big main line here. It says an appeal is reviewed by. That which is what it should be in, anyway.
Right.
The least time-consuming and most effective solution the mayor devised is simple, expeditious, and fair. The director says, unfortunately, it turns out to be a standing committee. Well, who says it's a standing committee? How does it become a standing committee? If it becomes a standing, then figure out another way to do it. And that's the last part, and here I'm done with this thing. Is this permit process that I was hoping you'd pay some attention to, is that you go through all of the steps you talked about, hand it to city manager, he says no, then have the mayor pro tem look at it. This ain't a committee, this ain't a group of people, just independently as part of their job description. And then the mayor is the oversight for the entire process, and at some time we'll review and concern and comment on it. But I'm curious, how did this become how was it determined that it was a Brown Act issue? That's one of them.
Okay. I'll have Mr. Fletcher comment on that, Mr. Quigg.
I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
But I can tell you that if you check the definitions of a standing committee under the Brown Act, you're going to find that probably what I suggested to do would be a standing committee. But Mr. Fletcher, maybe you could address it, please.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, as long as any entity, group, or committee that's created by the council that has any continuing jurisdiction, such as a committee of two that would review these appeals, becomes a Brown Act body, which simply means you have to have notice meetings and an agenda. It can be still fairly informal. It doesn't have to be in here and all that. But yeah, and it's really clear that it has to be. It is a committee, and you don't want to come up with some jury-rigged ad hoc theory that winds up creating two problems. You have a problem with your appeal, and now you have a problem with your process. That's not in anyone's interest.
If you want to look at it this way, Mr. Quigg, the whole intent of the Brown Act is for decisions to be made in public. And while this would be a discretionary decision that would be technically being reviewed, after thinking about my recommendation as to how we could accomplish it through the mayor and the mayor pro tem, it technically would be the mayor and the mayor pro tem making a decision, not in open public. And we're elected officials, and the Brown Act doesn't like that. I think we can accomplish the same thing with different players. We can accomplish the same thing. It just needs to be someone other than the mayor and the mayor pro tem. And I think we can really accomplish it either by taking to the planning commission with the low-cost appeal or through this new appeal board. I really think it'd work. No. If you want to talk to me separately about it after the meeting, you're welcome to.
Mayor?
Yes.
I just wanted to comment, some of the comments you heard aren't on this report, but we will be looking at our fee resolution as part of the budget process. And we have looked seriously at the fact that some of our fees, especially for signs, actually exceed the cost of building the sign.
Yeah.
And so we're making recommendations in the fee review that'll come up later
Right.
about that.
Mm-hmm. And that's really important. I mean, if you have an appeal process for a $50,000 project that's $1,500, or you have an appeal process that's $1,500 for $200 sign, it doesn't make a lot of sense. So those are the things we have to look at too. All right, I'll bring it back to the council. Any further comments, direction to staff, Questions?
Mayor Blatz?
Yes.
I have a comment. For this building, the Board of Building Appeals, I know we have as a qualification requirement, maybe a licensed contractor. Is there any way we could put slash, like maybe sometimes there's subcontractors or supervisors that are licensed contract, but not the owner of the company. Sometimes I feel like they're out in the field and they understand the ins and outs better than the general contractor. That's just a suggestion, adding it to option B.
I would agree. I don't think it needs to be a general contractor.
No, this is set out in the state building code, but they're looking for is the licensing side of it. You're right, they don't have to be the owner of the business. It's the holder of the license that they want to have, so they have particular knowledge.
Any other comments? Questions? Staff, you have any questions?
No, I guess based on the discussion, we will proceed.
Okay, thank you. All right, item number 3 is the fiscal year 2012-2013 budget. Mr. Clark?
So that goes, okay. Oops. Okay. Thank you, Mayor and members of the City Council. As is our practice, at the beginning of May, we issued the draft or the proposed budget for next fiscal year. And so the proposed budget is sort of the starting point of the budget process. And tonight, I just wanted to give you and the community an overview of what the budget's all about from a very, very high general level, and then ask you to start setting a schedule for a more detailed review of department by department expenditures. So first of all, the budget process. The first step was the City Council setting its 2012 to 2014 goals and priorities. And those priorities drive the budget process. The next step is the City Manager's proposed budget, which, as I indicated, I've just issued. The next step after that is for the Council to actually update your goals. And we're going to be talking a little bit this evening about updating goals, so that we're sure that we're working towards the right objectives. Then we'll have budget workshops and issue discussions where we'll get into the details. We'll have a public hearing in June where we get public input on all these items. And then we really get to the hard part, which is usually there's, as I say, not enough gravy to cover all the biscuits. And so the council has to make the hard decisions about what things we will be able to fund and what things we will not be able to fund, and maybe what things we have to cut in order to fund the things that are more important. But in a way, it's no different than your family budget. And then by the end of June, we intend to adopt the final budget. So, as I indicated, the council goals drive the budget. What we're trying to do is align our work effort with your desires. And one of the most important goals of the City Council consistently over the whole time we've been doing this is to address our infrastructure. And one of the main things and one of the first things we did in putting together the budget was to look at the 5-year capital improvement plan and see how we can get from where we are right now, which is a condition of deferred maintenance, where we have bad roads, bad park facilities, bad buildings, to a place where we have first-class infrastructure. And the strategy that we've been working on for 3 consecutive years now is that as we recover from the recession and our hotel tax grows, we're setting aside a portion of that before we spend anything else on anything else for capital improvements. So in this chart, you can see that back in 07-08, we were over $2.5 million in TOT, all of which was going into city operations. During the recession, our revenues fell back, and we were almost $1 million shorter by the time 9-10 came along. And along with that, we had to pare down our staff, pare down our expenditures, and get to pretty much a bare bones issue. Now, subsequent to that, TOT in particular, more than any other revenue source, has begun to recover. And as it recovers, we've been able to cover the cost of living for our bare bones staff, and we've set aside the remainder to fund capital improvements. And that's sort of our strategy for getting to first-class infrastructure. So during the current year, these are the things that we're spending money on in capital improvements. Road overlays, $175,000, parks, $225,000, streets, $426,000, primarily Fulton Street, obviously. We have some complete streets projects. We've done some parking lots. We've done minor upgrades to facilities and drainage. In transit, we did those beautiful bus shelters by the Y. And so all told, we had $1 million capital program this year. Next year, if the council approves the budget as laid out, we have the ability to have a $1.7 million capital program. A lot of that is road overlays. We were only able to do 2 road overlays this last year, partly because some of the grant funding for other overlays had administrative requirements that kind of pushed it into next year. But next year we should be in a position to do 12 road overlays, which I think will make a big difference. We also are in a position to spend a lot more money on parks and altogether continue the effort of upgrading our facilities. So the significant projects for the current year was Fulton Street, the Y bus shelters, rebuilding the Sarzati restrooms, overlaying Oak and El Paseo, the park and ride lot restoration, which was repaving and rebuilding part of that parking lot. And then we did some energy efficient programs with our lighting and with our air conditioning. The significant projects in the proposed budget are 12 road segment overlays, putting a cover on the Sarzati picnic area, redoing the Libby Park play equipment in anticipation of Rotary doing the shade structure there, fixing up the Libby Park restrooms, building a bike bridge at the Fox Canyon crossing of the bike path, which, as you know, narrows down right now and only has 1 lane, basically. Slurry sealing the bike trail from Fox to the end. A number of pedestrian crossing safety improvements, which was a very high council priority. And then we do have money to address the issues that the museum raised with their building. This totally doesn't show very well. What I tried to show, this is a map of the city. It shows the 2 road segments that we did this year in blue, and I don't think even blacking out the world will show those. In green, it shows the ones that are proposed for this year, and in red, the ones for the subsequent 2 years. We'll have to get a better graphic, because I think it gives you a feel for how much road work we have in the city. We have 41 linear miles of road, and we're going segment by segment, and I think it was nice that we got 2 done. It'll probably be somewhat noticeable when we get 12 done, and I think people will really see that we're fixing up our infrastructure when we get another 12 done. So I think overall, that's like about 4 or 5 years of paving to really get to a place where it looks like we're keeping up our roads. And it's a lot of money. I call it black gold, you know, that asphalt.
Except it's more expensive.
Yeah, if we paved the roads with gold, it wouldn't be a whole lot cheaper, yeah. So the overview of where we are from 30,000 feet is that tourism is growing. It's not only growing in Ojai, but it's growing in California and throughout the nation. It seems that tourism got hit the hardest during the recession, and it's coming back the quickest after the recession. So hopefully that's a good leading indicator. The financial results for the current fiscal year, 12-13, are better than expected. So we actually will be able to build up our reserves a little bit this year, and reserves are growing. The proposed budget for the fiscal year 13-14 is balanced, and actually there's about $40,000 surplus to address needs that haven't been addressed in that budget yet. And there are some what I call clouds on the horizon, and that is that even though we've made some pretty significant changes in the way we fund post-retirement medical and also the way we provide retirement benefits, the costs are going to go up before they go down. So whereas we were spending about $8,000 per retiree on retiree health benefits, our actuary tells us it's going to be about $1,000 in the future. But we still have a lot of people retiring out at $8,000 before we get to the ones that retire out at $1,000. So you'll see a rise in our liabilities before you see a drop. The other thing is that PERS has created a new tier, which is a 3rd tier for us, a lower tier than even our 2nd tier of retirement benefits. So as we hire new employees, their retirement costs will be less. But overall, PERS lost a lot of money during the recession, and so they've changed their actuarial assumptions. And starting in 2015-16, they're going to start building up the rates so that they can build up their reserves for the long term. So we're actually going to see a rate increase because of that. We may also see a rate increase because we have the audacity to live longer these days, and their actuarials weren't really right. And then there's also an argument about what is a reasonable rate of return to expect on investments for PERS, which could result in rate increases. So I think for next year, the year after, we'll be okay, but this will start to take a hold when we get into maybe the third year out. So it's really important that we build up reserves and get on top of our capital projects now before we get in a position where it's harder to do it. So that's the end.
Thank you. Councilwoman Clapp?
Could you turn the slides back on and go back about 4 or 5 slides? Trying.
Tell me when I'm in the right place.
Yeah, okay, let's see. Okay, go forward. Go forward again. And forward one more time. Okay. Bike trail slurry seal, Fox to the end. I thought the bike trail was the county.
I think we're responsible for maintenance of the portion that's in the city. Is that not right, Greg? Greg's not here.
He's not here. Okay. Okay. Okay, that was it. Thank you.
Can we
Yeah.
shut the slides
Yeah,
down?
go and shut it
Okay.
down. I thought there was something else, but that's fine.
I'll let someone who's talking.
Any questions or comments by council? This is a discussion item. I don't have any cards. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to address anything raised by Mr. Clark? I think that it's a tribute to our Visitors Bureau, as well as the economy, but I think it's a tribute to our Visitors Bureau to see the rebound in tourism. And I think that our support for them and our support of the T-bid is really something that was important to our community, and I think we're reaping the benefits from it now. Any other comments with regard to this agenda item? Mr. Clark,
So
do you
the-
need
the
any?
on- The only question I would have is the schedule that we've laid out in here for review of the budget acceptable, which would call for 6 o'clock meetings at the next 2 council meetings to go through the department budgets.
Okay.
I certainly would rather have a 6 than go till, 10:30, 11:30, or whatever.
Is that agreeable to everyone?
Yeah, I agree with the schedule. I just have a quick question for City Manager Clark. When the commissions, when the department, I guess the department budgets, the only commission I see as being kind of active and recommending some budget fees is the Parks and Recreation Commission. Are they going to see the proposed budgets that you have in here?
Yes.
And comment on them? Okay.
Yes, they've already seen it and reviewed it. They did ask for another month to look at it, so their input will probably come in June.
And I guess also the planning department on the fees of what's acceptable for cutting the fees, like for a permit or.
Yeah, I think, well, when we were meeting in the workshop earlier, there was a suggestion that some of the planning commissioners be at those meetings. I think that the interesting question for planning is what are the priorities going to be? And actually, that's the next item on our agenda right now, but I'm sure it's an ongoing discussion.
Yeah, because I saw a lot of changes, and especially in the CCD department, and I just wanted to see, since I'm not a contractor that goes out and pulls the permits here and pulls another one here, a variance. I just want their input, and I want staff's also input. Is this fair? And I really want to take their recommendations seriously, and I trust them, because it's something I don't want us to be. to lose too much money, but I want it to be reasonable and fair. And that's my only input.
You'll be receiving recommendations from the HPC and the Arts Commission. Yeah, they're actually budget requests for additional spending. So each of the commissions
Okay.
in a different kind of way are all involved in this.
Okay, great.
Councilwoman Clapp, do you have a question?
I think I can do it with the next item.
Okay. Anything else on this item? Okay. Let's move on to item number 4, City Council goals and priorities. Mr. Clark?
Thank you, Mayor and members of the City Council. It's always hard when we're discussing goals to know how big picture to go and how detailed to go. And so in your staff report, I give you a whole lot of detail, and a lot of it had to do with how you, as individual council members, ranked various projects and so forth. But I think for the purpose of the discussion tonight, I put together a discussion guide, which was handed out as a separate item, and there should be copies available for the public out there. And I thought it might be most beneficial to kind of look at the big picture. And so I wanted to go through this discussion guide and then get input from the City Council. So first of all, as I indicated in the slideshow, the driving philosophy is making sure that we put enough money aside for infrastructure before we fund everything else. And so I hope that the council agrees with that based on what I've seen in your surveys in the past, but that's a very important thing to weigh in on.
Just to interrupt for a second, is it the council's general consensus that we do want to make sure that money's being put aside for the infrastructure?
Yes.
Okay. There you have it.
Okay. The second item is planning, and I think with the planning resources that we have in the budget, we can do different sets of work depending on what your priorities are. And so we've talked with the Planning Commission, and we've looked at the discussions that we've had in the past about priorities, and it seemed to me that the best approach to take was to look at what are the highest priorities for the first 6 months, and then when we get done with that 6 months, we can say what are the highest priorities for the next 6 months. And so our input was that we have included money in the budget for Cycle 5 of the housing element. And that's been a fairly consistent direction that we've gotten from the council and interest from the Planning Commission. The second item is that within the context of the Cycle 5 housing element, we had planned on looking at the 25-foot height limit, but we could also do that on a parallel track independent of the housing element, and we'd like your input on that. Third is that we believe that our ability to get favorable review from the state on the housing element will in part be based on our success in implementing Cycle 4. And we think the area where we have the best chance of implementing and actually making some progress is with the second unit amnesty program. So we think that we should dedicate resources to getting that done. Then we have 2 projects that are very close to being done, but that I really would be interested in knowing whether the council wants us to bring forward or not. And that's the landscaping ordinance and the building code. And just by way of explanation, these 2 items are driven by state law. The state has said you will have a low water landscaping ordinance and you will have an updated building code. Now they actually go into effect by operation of law, even if we don't do that. And to me, these 2 particular items are not scary. They're very routine. Most cities, the councils say, why are you bothering us with this? Just do it. But for some reason here, maybe because of the recession or maybe for other reasons, people have just gotten very worried about, oh, is this another level of regulation that's going to somehow hurt us? So if you don't think that there's the will in the community to do something that's actually pretty routine and adopt laws that are mandated by the state, then maybe we shouldn't spin our wheels on them and just put it off for a while. But if we've gotten over that because we've spent so much time reviewing it so far, I would think we should go ahead. And I know the Planning Commission spent a lot of time on both of these. So that's sort of an open-ended question. And then we do say that we would have time to work on other priorities as time permits, but we certainly would like to hear the council's input on, of the things that we have not listed, are there things that are really urgent to be working on in the next 6 months? So maybe that's a good place to take a break and get some reaction from the council.
All right, Councilwoman Clapp?
Okay, housing element, I mean, that's a given. The height limit I'd like to address now. I think it's a simple fix. I think it's something that we've expressed that we felt was important quite a while ago now. And I think the current 35-foot height limit is excessive, and I would like to see us work on changing it to the 25 feet now outside of the housing element, because that'll take quite a bit more time. I have a question. Can you help me with this? Because when we had our joint meeting with the Planning Commission, we were talking about moving forward with the neighborhood idea, and where does that fit in with the building code? Because you were talking about that being sort of something that's rote, but at the same time...
It's unrelated. The building code it's just adopting new codes that have been updated by the state and local amendments that relate to them. It's not neighborhood planning. So neighborhood planning would be a separate item.
But there may be changes in the code within the neighborhood planning.
Not really. It's not zoning. The neighborhood planning is primarily a zoning activity. It's talking about, what are the setbacks, what are the heights, what are the building envelopes, maybe what are the street widths, I don't know, things like that, which are primarily zoning issues. The building code is just, how many bricks can you stack
That's
and
right.
how much lead
How
do
far
you have to
studs
stick?
have to be apart and stuff like
Exactly.
that. Okay. Because I think that we do, I think as a group, we agreed that we wanted to proceed with the neighborhood planning concept, i.e., didn't we? So that would fit in there somewhere under the planning, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I interrupt?
Yeah, please do,
Councilmember
because I'm-
Clapp? Just for clarification, for me, the building code, while I was reading staff report saying that there's already a document out there that was worked on by the Planning Commission. It's just that, like you said, the public or our constituents weren't comfortable implementing it at that time, so we didn't do it. And those local amendments that we added to those to the building codes, you're saying that if we're ready, we'll just implement what they had what they already wrote up.
So we based those updates on the 2010 statewide update. We're now up to the 2013 statewide update, so we'd have to adapt them a little bit to take into consideration changes. It's a fairly minor adaptation, though. So pretty much 95% what you said is correct, but there is a little 5% that we have to adapt.
Just adjust them. Okay. I mean, because I don't mind if you think that the commission would be willing to work on those minor details, and if something that they want to do, and you don't think it'll take that much staff time, I wouldn't mind moving forward with that too, if it's already if 95% of it's done. Deforestation or the district plan, I think it is a high priority in my opinion. The Planning Commission thinks so, and I agree with them. Again, second units amnesty program, I think it's important for us to put some money into that. Cycle 5, I know we're already starting that. We're trying to finish implementing Cycle 4. Let's see. There is, I feel like we're starting to work on processes to alleviate or to better control code enforcement. So I don't know what's your plan on that issue? Like, are you proposing us to wait till in 6 more months, or?
Actually, code enforcement is item 3. Maybe when we get done with the planning item, we can
Okay.
just spend a little bit more time on code enforcement.
Councilwoman Smith, comments?
Yes. I'm not sure, Council Clapp, putting in 25 feet as a height limitation may actually bring us to the attention of the state, because we cannot eliminate necessarily three-story buildings, and we'd then have to identify more sites for
I think
potential housing, no?
So you're correct in cycle 4, but in cycle 5, we have another bite at the apple.
Right, okay.
And I think what we've consistently said is that cycle 5 should contain and be based on Ojai values. And so we should do what we think is right for Ojai, and then we should negotiate with the state, and there's a breaking point where we're going to have to make some decisions on how far we go to accommodate the state. But if Ojai values means 25 feet or 2 stories, or at least 25 feet in some zones, then we're thinking we should make a case for that, and we think we can make a compelling case
As
for
long as it's
that.
cycle 5, not cycle 4.
This is outside of SPLs. SPLs where you can't restrict the three-story.
So you're,
But throughout the city right now, we have within our code a 35-foot height limit.
Oh,
And
I see where you're going.
Councilman Blatz and I mentioned a few months ago that 35 seemed excessive for a height limit throughout the entire community, and that he and I both felt, and maybe you still, do you still feel that way, that 25 feet is plenty high? But as far as the SPL, you're right. But, so it's kind of two separate issues.
I see,
Change
I see.
the overall
Yeah,
code.
I think it's hard, you have to
Right.
put it into perspective
Right.
and what that
Right,
means.
right.
Okay, I'm
The-
fine with that.
The thing is that, excuse me, the thing is that we have a 35-foot height restriction within the city, whether it's 1 story, 2 stories, or 3 stories. If you're in some sort of an overlay where we have to make accountability for affordable housing, we can't restrict the 3 stories, but we might in those overlays have to go to 30 feet or something. But elsewhere, we can say 25 feet,
I got you, okay.
and that's what I think we should do.
Yeah.
Okay. I see,
Okay.
okay, thank you.
I just have a couple of comments. One on, in this area of planning, I really do want to implement the staff level determinations that we discussed earlier. I think it's really important. I think that's going to go a long way to changing the public's perception, and I think it's not a, I think a lot of it has to do with perception and not necessarily based on facts. But I do think that these additional steps where the public feels as though they're being heard is really, really important. As far as the landscaping and the building code, I would have no objection to bringing forth whatever the mandated codes are and approve them. But I do not think we're ready to bring forth the mandated codes in all the other codes that have been worked on. There's still a lot of consternation, for lack of a better word, in the public over some of the modifications or additions or clarifications to that code. But if we need to bring something forward to get it approved as it's mandated to, it's going to go into effect anyway. I see no reason we shouldn't approve that.
I think we should talk about that more, but I really understand what you're saying about the city needs to be ready for this. I've been out there and talking about it enough that I'm hearing some of the same things that you are.
Okay. I think that the other points, the amnesty program's important, housing element's important. So I'm on board with all these, subject to my comments, as long as we get this implementation of the staff level determinations in there somewhere.
Just a quick question, Mayor Blatz.
Yeah.
So we're identifying what our priority is right now. Will you come back and kind of give us an idea how much money is going to be allocated for each priority and how we're going to work it? Because we're creating standing committees or appeal boards, and I want to see exactly where that fits in our budget. So,
Yeah, really the final decision will be the decision on what you fund.
And I do think we should take the building height issue out. We don't have to wait for the 5th cycle to work on that. I think we should do it immediately. I'd be supportive of that.
Great. I think it's important.
Any other comments on 1 and 2? All right, Mr. Clark, number 3.
Okay, with respect to code enforcement, we've had a number of issues come up during the course of the year. And for example, with vacation rentals and existing fences and backyard storage units, we've kind of said that we're not going to enforce the existing rules until we have a chance to review them, but it really hasn't been a high enough priority to do. So I just sort of wanted to point that out, that those are on hold, and if that's okay for another 6 months, that's fine with us too, but I don't think we should let it pass without commenting on it. We plan to continue to enforce codes based on complaint, but I think we have been more aggressive than that with the sandwich boards and with the banners and so forth, and so we wanted your thoughts and input on whether that's appropriate. So the general topic is where do we want to go with these code enforcement issues?
Comments by council? Councilman Smith?
Are we looking to increase our planning department's employees? Or are we still going to be using a contractual?
So my recommendation is just for the next 6 months, is that we focus on recruiting and bringing on board a part-time planner. And that planner will take the place of the consultant that we use as planning now. So we'll have a consistent presence of someone knowledgeable in planning. They'll charge their time primarily to projects, but they'll also be available to answer questions over the counter and that kind of stuff.
Right, now we talked,
And,
okay.
right, and that we continue with the contract plan check and code enforcement, and then during that course of the 6 months, evaluate where we should go after that.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay. Any other comments?
In regards to your question about does council want to continue like sandwich boards and temporary banner policy, code enforcement, I mean, I struggle with this because I feel like we need more, and I don't know if my fellow council members feel this way, input from the city of what is appropriate to enforce. And I don't know how to do that. I don't know if I'm being too ambitious and unrealistic when I say we should hear from the publics, or if we should really enforce the ordinance as written and have it be complaint-based. So, I mean, I would love some feedback, but I mean, that's where I feel like we should get more public opinion.
The public opinion is always important. However, there's a couple of things. Sandwich boards to me are not that objectionable. I don't think there should be advertising on them. You see some sandwich boards where a vendor will give you a sandwich board and they'll have their logo on the top, like Coors Light or something like that. I'm not so sure we want that, but a sandwich board in and of itself, if a restaurant owner wants to have one, I don't find them objectionable. The temporary banner policy, I think we have to look at it in a couple of different lights, and the one that's been brought to my attention is one I think we have to look at. Our theatrical groups in town use banners to promote their plays. Currently, the banner policy says you can't have a banner up for more than 30 days, and you can't have more than, I believe, 4 banners up in any one year. Well, just as an example with the Ojai Theater, and with Theater 150 as well as the Arts Center, their plays will run for 6 weeks at a time. So if they have a banner up and they want to promote it a little bit earlier, well, the 30 days doesn't fit. And they'll do 6 productions in a year. And to me, the banners that they have designed look a whole lot better than if we were to allow them to put up some sort of a changeable letterboard or whatever kind of a changeable board that would, for all extensive purposes, be a banner anyway. So I think we need to look at it with regard to specific instances. I mean, we need to be able to promote our arts in town, and as long as it's being done tastefully, I think we need to allow them to have their banners if they need them. And the code currently doesn't allow them to do it, so they're in violation, and we either look the other way or we change the code.
Mayor?
Yeah.
That's a real slippery slope when you start going into done tastefully and whatever. What I may think is tastefully, someone else may think is not. So that's a slippery slope. I think we really have to work to avoid that. And so that's my concern about that.
Well, currently, whether they can have it for 30 days and 4 times a year, they still have to have their design approved. I see nothing wrong with them having it up for 6 weeks, 6 times a year. It's the same criteria of approval. It's just how long can they leave it up, and how often can they change it?
Well, I remember one example where there was a banner up at the corner of Country Club and Ojai Avenue, so when you came off Country Club, you saw it. It was for some play or other, and it was up forever, and I thought it was awful. And we did ask them to take it down. So I just don't want a repeat of that. And where would these banners be put? I mean, that was a corner. They put it on the Ojai Valley School fence. And I'm trying to think where the Art Center puts their theater banners. They put them on
At the theater.
At the theater, right. They're not, right. And you see, at the theater is one thing. When they're putting them on a public venue like a fence or something that is not on their property, that's a
Right.
whole other thing.
Well, we
too.
can always limit it that you can't have it off-site.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay. I
Okay.
would be open to that.
Okay. So those are my thoughts on those two issues.
So then, with respect to the other departments, our plan is to continue to address the priorities that you set in 2012 through 2014. But if there's something specific that you would like us to be working on or focusing on or doing first, we'd certainly want to know what that is.
I have a real quick question. It's kind of in the meat of the thing, and boy, I'm going to have a hard time finding it. It's the tree budget. The Tree City USA requires a certain amount of money each year be spent on trees.
Uh-huh.
And I noticed in the budget last year, it was $3,000 some odd dollars. And as of today, 1,000 some odd had been spent. And we're budgeting another 3,000 some odd for the next budget cycle. Was not all the money used?
We had some donations, so I think we actually ended up planting about twice as many trees as we planned to buy, but we didn't have to spend all the money. So we're trying to make true to the commitment. I think, if I recall right, was 25 trees a year.
Uh-huh.
We're trying to make sure we do at least the 25 trees a year
Uh-huh.
that's in the plan, and actually we ended up doing quite a few more this year. But so we're budgeting based on that thought.
Okay. Because I was thinking if you could roll because I read in the policy, you can roll money over, you don't spend.
Oh, yeah, the tree fund is donations, which can only be used for purchasing trees.
Mhm.
So if we don't budget enough at the beginning of the year, we can always come back and budget more. That money won't go away. Any money we don't spend will just stay in the account, and
Oh,
it's there
okay.
for the future.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments? Do you have direction?
Yeah, this was very helpful. I really appreciate it.
All right. Moving on to item number 5, consider the appointment of a public member to the Fiscal Policy Budget Committee. Mr. Clark?
Thank you. We had a suggestion that we add a public member to the Fiscal Policy Budget Committee. Right now, the committee consists of 2 council members, the treasurer, the city manager, the finance director. And so this would just provide another set of eyes to look at our numbers and assure transparency.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I made this suggestion because I felt that it was really important to have, for transparency and for kind of an education, public education, somebody from the public participate in the budget committee meetings. It would be really valuable, I think, to have somebody there, because a lot of times when people go out in the community, you get questions about the budget, and somebody like that can help educate the public and also make people more confident about the transparency of the process and how the whole thing operates. So I think it would just be a really good idea.
Yeah. Councilwoman
It's
Smith?
publicly noticed, isn't it, right now? But nobody ever shows up.
No.
Well, my only concern would be that the person who came on that group would have a very personal agenda and did not have you could not see the whole big picture. So that would be my only concern, that they have a certain personal agenda and that's all they're hammering. So they have to be open to the whole picture. So that would be my concern, that somebody would just beeline on just their issue.
Maybe it needs to be an application policy like for commission.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm all in favor of transparency, so I think it'd be a good idea.
Likewise.
Yeah. All right, any other comments on this item? All right, we're going to adjourn as the Ojai City Council and reconvene as the Ojai Redevelopment Successor Agency. And there's a consent calendar. I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, so moved.
Your second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Laura,
Yes.
Clapp,
Yes.
Smith. Yes. Strobel, not here, Blatz.
Yes. We're going to adjourn as the Redevelopment Agency Successor Agency and come back to council with reports from the council members. Councilman Laura, do you have anything this evening?
Yes, I did attend the SCAG conference a week and a half ago or 2 weeks ago. I think it was a great conference. I was very impressed by all the speakers, by the panels. They had a good mixture of public elected officials and a lot of private CEOs, supervisor, managers. It really made me see the whole picture of how we're trying to run the state. And it was very informative. I came out with needing to learn more than when I attended the meeting. But it was great to see. And it just also on the side note, I have been attending. It just seems like we've been in such a positive road about having our monies coming in, and it's showing. And there's other areas. The arts. My oldest child, she's going to be in her first or second play, The Little Mermaid. So that's going to be. I guess promoting for them. And then also the Youth Foundation, I've just been participating in some of their events, and it just seems like everything is going, and we got Sophocles on their board, which is a great thing, and I think it's good for both agencies to come together and really look at where we could improve our community, and it really makes me happy. So that's my comment.
Just for the public, SCAG stands for the Southern California Association of Governments. So that's a very big conference.
Councilwoman Clapp, you have anything tonight? No? Councilwoman Smith?
I just want to thank Councilwoman Clapp for stepping into me on VRSD, which stands for the Ventura Regional Sanitary District. And also, I'm very concerned about the fire season. Can we arrange for a fire captain to do a 10-minute presentation to Ojai and demonstrate perhaps in a slideshow about where the real hotspots are and what the public should be doing? Because I am very concerned about, apparently the amount of rain we got this year was just enough to see the vegetation, but if you look around outside, it looks like it's August. Everything's so brown. So I think it's going to be a really bad year for Ventura County, and I think it would behoove us to have a little more education from someone from the fire department.
Thank you. I don't have anything this evening. Mr. Clark, you have anything?
Just wanted to let you know that Amgen bike tour is coming through town tomorrow between 2:30 and 3:30, so don't blink. But we're looking forward to that.
Yeah. Mr. Fletcher?
Nothing, sir.
No? Our city clerk, anything?
Well, I thought I'd just mention Fulton Street will have their dedication at 4 p.m. on Thursday for anyone that would like to attend, and hopefully it'll be
Good.
open shortly after that.
I wish that Mr. Grant was here. Yeah. Well, you're here in place of the captain. Nice to have you.
Nice to be here.
Have anything for us?
No, just as the city manager mentioned, the Amgen race is a lot of planning, but should go off real well.
Then we'll keep our fingers crossed. That's a nice, it's a fairly prestigious event to come through Ojai for sure. And it's always interesting to watch. Ms. Mayers, anything for us this evening?
Nothing.
Yeah. Mr. Mullane, anything more? No? Okay. Well, I think if that's it, then we stand adjourned.